You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Welcome to Voice Junkie. So let's not wait and jump right into it and talk about the debacle that was the Democratic National Convention is this week, actually. I'm talking about the Republican National Convention, or aka the circus in town. Ringling, Barnum, and Bailey's was sprinkled all over that damn floor in Cleveland, Ohio. You couldn't even believe all the blasphemous things that was coming out from speakers like Laura Ingraham and some soap opera stars that nobody knows about. Just a whole bunch of crazy rhetoric coming out from the Republicans, the usual fear message that they send out to their followers all the time. The interesting part about what we've seen from the Republicans is that they have not transcended, they have not evolved into what we know of our society today, as far as reaching out to younger people, reaching out to millennials, reaching out to the future of the country. They're still trying to put a message out to those who have, their time has passed, the older generation. That's primarily the big chunk of what the Republicans represent today. And if you're tailoring your message to people who, are the past and not the people who are coming up as the future, then your party is in big trouble. So, I wanted to talk on it. I read this piece called "The RNC is a Disaster, So Why Can't I Sleep at Night?" It's a piece by Didi Guttenplan. I hope I pronounced his name right. It's on The Nation. And the subtitle says, "A book on Hitler's mass appeal explains why we can't underestimate Trump." And this has been the message that I watched the Young Turks, guilty as charged. I watched the progressive juggernaut that is on, YouTube. Those guys put out, very, very good content, and they just speak their minds, and they don't. They're unapologetic far as what their ideology is and what they feel the country should go, far as being more progressive, more liberal, and I agree with that. But they, from day one, have always, the leader of that, Cenk Uygur, from day one, he's always been trying to say to his viewers, not just his viewers, but to the media, like, hey, man, don't underestimate this guy, Donald Trump, man. He has this weird, quirky appeal where he kind of stumbles into things, and it's hard to explain, man. It's like when he gets he like grows every time he gets attacked, or every time he says something degrading about a culture or a specific type of people. He grows in stature. His base gets stronger. He gets, more attention from the media than any other candidate did during the primaries. And, the guy is really, really trying to put out his own version of a populist message, which is resonating with a lot of voters. And this is what irks the hell out of me with Hillary Clinton and Hillary Clinton supporters. They just completely ignore, the strength of populism and where the country is today. They're tired of the standard politicians. They're tired of, these rehearsed politicians who, look like carbon copies of the next one. And they're tired of that. They want something more authentic. They're tired of being marginalized by a system that, that is tailored for the rich and the powerful. So this is why candidates like Donald Trump has risen to this kind of weird popularity, and candidates like Bernie Sanders, But, back to the RNC convention real quick. You had a lot of forgetful speeches, man. It was a lot of forgetful speeches. I just think that it was a snooze fest all around. I think Chris Christie had a strong speech. Again, you got to keep this in mind that every single speech is nothing positive. It's all doom and gloom. America is in trouble. Nothing positive. There's no big overreaching, let's strive for greatness. Let me give you examples of how we can do that. There was no examples. Everything was just so vague. Everything was spoken in generalities, and it was just no real clear message for Americans and those who are sitting on the fence who might not vote this November. There was no reason that those people who aren't going to vote or who are unsure that they're going to vote to jump over and pick the Republican side. There was no real message to me that was strong enough to convince people. So, the message was lost, in my opinion, because they played on the same fears, and that's what they do, man. They have a doctorate in fear mongering. Republicans have a doctorate in that thing, and I think they missed an opportunity to really capitalize and bring in more people to their tent by being so goddamn negative. I think it hurt them. Obviously, Trump was going to come out of this with a bump in the polls, because traditionally after a convention you do get a somewhat of a bump in the polls. So other than that, I think that it was a real missed opportunity far as what could have been done on the Republican side of things, try to pull over new voters. But other than that, there wasn't a lot of strong speeches from anybody, really. I mean, like I said, Chris Christie had a strong speech. Basically, he had the savages in the crowd chanting how they should lock up Hillary Clinton. I mean, that's respectful. This is a guy who campaigned, part of his staff just pleaded guilty and is going to do some time over that bridge scandal that Chris Christie is going through right now. He's actually going to go through trial for that, where he, shut down a bridge in New York, one of the most popular and most busy bridges that lead to New Jersey, for political reasons, against his, adversaries. This is the type of guy that, the Republicans like to worship. Guys who, talk down upon other people, but be doing the same dirty shit behind closed doors. And then when you point it out to them, they go, "Oh, who, me? Me? Not me. Oh, no, not me. I'm above that." And, it's crazy. So, at the same time, he's leading a chant of lock her up, while his campaign guy is getting locked up for that bridge scandal, and hell, he may get reprimanded for it as well. So, that's the hypocrisy that we're talking about with this party. These guys are littered with hypocrites. So that's just one example, Chris Christie. So, if you wanted to give any kind of credit, you could give him credit for that speech. It served up the proper red meat for that crowd. Other than that, you had a decent speech from Mike Pence. I'm just trying to remember some of the speeches because it was hard to stay awake for a lot of them. But the Mike Pence speech was good. I mean, it was your typical hokey Republican speech that you would expect. It felt like I was listening to some Republican speak from the 80s. It was that kind of speech. It was like one of those old party speeches, and Donald Trump brought him on for a reason, because he needs that support from the Republican elites, because right now the Republican leadership is not really openly supporting him. So I think him bringing on a Mike Pence was, trying to put out an olive branch to the leadership. But, Mike Pence does what he does, and he did his, hokey speech, the typical, Republican speech that you would hear. But it was even though the message I don't care about, I mean, if you're just talking about execution, it was executed well, far as what he was trying to disseminate to the crowd that he was speaking to in that arena. Other than that, you got the Ted Cruz speech, which was like probably the highlight of the whole goddamn week, because you had some controversy. So you had Ted Cruz, who was, him and Donald went at it during the primaries. He came out, said his little speech, and he got into saying you should pick the best candidate who represents your values and blah, blah, blah. And turned out he didn't fully out-endorse Trump. And the crowd started to boo him. They started to boo Ted Cruz during the last couple of minutes of his speech, which was very interesting because that normally doesn't happen. So, Ted Cruz, as smarmy as he is, as a guy, is like like you look at him, you want to take a shower. Like, that's how smarmy he is. And, he's obviously trying to play both sides because he would like to run again. So, I don't know if his calculations were wise, but he damn sure was booed off that stage after he finished his speech. So that was a big controversy. But other than that, I'm not going to dwell on and on about the RNC convention because it was a snooze fest. It's what you would expect from a group that has patented the approach of fear mongering. So there was no rainbow talk. There was nothing positive. It wasn't no real discussion about policies and far as what they can do to help. You barely heard anything about jobs. You heard nothing about that. All you heard was hate the Muslims, hate the other, period. They hate the other. So it was all about hate the other, America's in trouble, and let's get our country back. That's basically the message. Nothing about policy. Nothing about, the economy. Nothing about how we're going to get you jobs. None of that. And I mean, if you represent a party like that who can't, address the issues that you have, not in these vague generalities, playing to your fears and your angst. No, not doing that. We're talking about giving you real answers, giving you real leadership as far as what you really care about most, which is, let's be honest, it's the economy right now. These guys had an opportunity to come out there and say, hey, this is how we'll do things. Here's an example, A, B, C, D. You don't get that from these guys. These guys don't have any policy ideas. And it burns my flesh when you got a lot of blind sheep out there who want to follow these kind of guys who don't have any message. There's no real message. Their message is hate. I mean, how can you get behind a message like that? How does that help anybody? How does that help your family pay bills? How does that help you put food on the table for your family? Hate doesn't do that. Hate is a distraction for what the hell is really going on out in the world. And, these sad people refuse to acknowledge that. They refuse to, or they're just incapable of seeing that because their hate just blinds them from reality. So that's what the kind of followers that the Republicans are fishing for. And they give them that red meat so they can continue to follow. So, on with the shit show. Let's talk about, let's just talk about, the upcoming convention, which is going to be way more interesting, way more smarter. Granted, I'm not either a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an independent, but I'm a guy who likes to hear about policy, who likes to hear about actual solutions and some reality, and you'll get that from the Democrats and during their convention this week. It starts tomorrow, Monday. I'm recording this on Sunday. So you'll get that. But, the question for the DNC is, how is their approach going to be? What you got was, a lot of firepower from the RNC convention, the Republican convention. So what I'd like to see from the Democrats is for them to grow a fucking spine this week and attack Donald Trump for the fraud that he is. Attack, attack, attack. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see some attacking, and I would like to see some clear visions for the future, some specifics that that the Republicans failed to do during their convention. If the Democrats can mix in those two things, they will have a successful week, and Hillary should get a nice little bump. But I would be remiss to not mention, the leak. The WikiLeaks' leak on the DNC and their emails that they had got a hold of. And I just got to touch on it real briefly. As a Bernie Sanders supporter, I supported Bernie Sanders during the primary. And, yeah, I voted for him. Unfortunately, in my state, I have to, register as either a Republican or a Democrat to vote during the primaries. So I had to vote, I had to change my, change my standing to a Democrat to vote for Bernie. I thought it was that important. But during the whole primary season, even if you aren't a Bernie supporter, you have to acknowledge, and this is what I used to get into a lot of debates with friends of mine close to me, and talking about politics or whatnot. If you got two set of eyes, two set of ears that are actually fully functioning, you have to acknowledge how shady, how dirty Bernie was treated during the primaries. The guy clearly was competing with a stacked deck. It's not bad enough that he already came back from a 16 points. This guy came back from a 60-point deficit when this whole thing started. This is what is not covered by the mainstream media because they're corrupt and they only go for those with power. They didn't cover that in the media. This guy came from a 60-point deficit to make it a contest against probably the most powerful name in politics, the Clinton name, the most powerful name in politics since the Kennedys. And this old guy that looks like a wizard in a suit, didn't get any kind of respect. Instead, he got dragged through the mud constantly, all primary. He was not only fighting the juggernaut that is Hillary Clinton, he was fighting his own party. He was fighting the mainstream media, these multi-billion-dollar media outlets. I don't care if it was MSNBC. I don't care if it was CNN. I don't care if it was Fox. He was fighting all of them because it was all mostly. And then the major news publications, the Washington Post, the Daily Beast, all these big media companies, online publishers, they were all hammering this guy. And he still made this a competitive race. Not to mention all the polling stations that they mysteriously closed throughout the primary. There was magically, they showed so many inconsistencies from the last primary. It was like, oh my God, he would go to like Arizona, or he would go to like a Rhode Island or whatever state. I'm just naming some off the top of my head. And they purposely, the DNC, purposely closed down a lot of polling stations nationwide. They give the advantage to Hillary, obviously, because Bernie was bringing out more people, more voters, more new voters into the game. And what's the best way to suppress voting? To make it harder to vote. Close down polling stations. Make them farther out for people. That's what they did. It was so freaking obvious. They did this during the primary. And, that's just one layer of it. Not to mention the registration issues that a lot of hundreds of thousands of voters had, where they had a hard time registering because they, had magically cut, deadlines for when you can register or when you can switch over to another party. They had all these things happening against Bernie, all primary. Not to mention, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the head suit in charge of the DNC. First of all, if you don't know why, she's such a polarizing character, you have to just know one thing. She is a unapologetic Hillary Clinton supporter. She was co-chair of Hillary Clinton's last race in the primaries against Barack Obama. She was the co-chair of her campaign. And now she's leading the DNC. You think she's not going to give preferential treatment toward her former boss and Hillary Clinton? Oh, you must be living under a rock, or you must be blind, deaf, or dumb to not realize that her affiliation with Hillary Clinton was already an indication that she was going to favor Hillary Clinton in a lot of things. And they went out of their way to give Hillary Clinton every single advantage necessary to win that primary. And it was still competitive. So now let's just retrace. Just go back of what I just said. Bernie had to go against the mainstream media, the major news publications, Hillary Clinton herself and her campaign, and his own goddamn party, the DNC, who stacked the deck against him by, another thing, by putting up, primaries, putting primaries on the fucking weekends. I mean, I can't count. First of all, there were less Democratic primaries than the Republicans had. I think the Republicans had double the amount of primaries, and the Democrats cut theirs in half purposely so Bernie's message wouldn't get out. They cut the damn primaries, the total number of primaries, and then the ones that they had, a lot of them they threw on the oddest days, Fridays, Saturdays. If you know anything about the entertainment business, you know that those are grave hour times because nobody is watching around Friday, Saturday. Come on, they knew that at the DNC. They did that to help out Hillary. And it turns out from the WikiLeaks leak for the DNC emails, it shows that they were in cahoots the whole time. And we all knew that. The emails proved that, Debbie, talking shit about Bernie, just belittling Bernie, them coming up with plans to smear Bernie. I mean, all of that was in the D. And these guys are supposed to be nonpartisan. Non-fucking partisan. What a joke that was. So, I don't want to harp too long on that, but I'm glad that WikiLeaks, document dump came out and it just exposed these guys for who they are. They're a bunch of frauds. And people see that. And this is why her untrustworthiness, Hillary Clinton, is so historically low. We're dealing with two of the most unpopular presidential candidates in our lifetimes, probably ever. People don't like Hillary Clinton, and it's for good reasons. She's a fraud. She's a money-bought corporate puppet that only, goes with what her donors want her to go with. And if Donald Trump was smart, his message should have been around that, about how corporate bought she was. But he's not going to do that because the whole Republican Party is bought as well. So, to make a long story short here, I don't want to go on too much on this first episode of The Voice Junkie. The Voice Junkie, no, not The Voice Junkie. It's Voice Junkie. I don't, want to go too long, but the bottom line is we're in for a very, very interesting election coming up. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know who's going to win. I have a really bad feeling that Donald Trump might pull this goddamn thing off. And if he pulls this thing off, we are fucked. A lot of people are underestimating him, just like I referenced early in this show about, the RNC, the piece that I brought up from The Nation about how comparing basically how, Hitler's rise to Trump's rise, far as him being a public figure, it's very reminiscent. Nobody thought Hitler was gonna take power and turn into the biggest superpower in the world at the time during World War II, or around that time before we went into war. With Trump, his biggest attribute right now is how much people continue to underestimate him. They're not just underestimating Trump. They're underestimating the vibe, the feel of a lot of people. People are tired of the bullshit. So that's why they're going for Trumps. They're going for the Sanders of the world. They're going for even like a Ron Johnson, who is the head libertarian guy. Last poll I seen a week ago had him up 13%. You got Jill Stein in the Green Party at about 5% or hovering around that. So people want solutions, and they're tired of the same two solutions that they've been getting for the past decade or so. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the DNC convention. We're going to see, who speaks. The rumor is Bernie's going to speak on the first night. So, I'm not surprised by that. They want to get him out the way, say, let's get him out the way. So we'll see what kind of message that the Democrats put out this week. And we'll see what kind of bump Hillary gets after the convention is over, and that's going to be a huge indication of what's going to come down the road in the next months to come. Is what kind of bump she gets out of this. If her bump isn't that big, look out. We're in for a real race, and we'll just see how it. We'll definitely trace it to see how it happens and see how things unfold. Until then. This is it. First episode. You can reach us at The Trendaholic, You can reach us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even on Snapchat, but I'm not always on Snapchat. But right now it's at The Trendaholic. Soon we'll have our own handles for Voice Junkie, so you guys can follow that. We'll keep you posted on that too as well. That's it. This is the first episode. Hope you guys stay tuned. Hope you guys liked it. This is a nice little experience. I had fun venting about a lot of different things. Voice Junkie is going to be a format like this all the time, where we get to talk about different subject matters, politics, sports, you name it. Even Pokemon Go. We'll have a whole discussion about that as well in the future. And wrestling. We talk about it all. So, hopefully you'll like this podcast. Hopefully this will be an interesting format for you guys to follow from a week-to-week basis. Until then, keep safe, be cool, and don't be a fool.